Hello, good evening, and welcome to today's episode of the program, The Law of the People and Governance, here on Spectrum Television. My name is Rachel David White, and I am your host. This is a program that talks about political issues and, of course, social issues that concerns our nation, Nigeria, as well, and, of course, explains government policies better to the people. Well, we'll just take a look at some of the trending stories in politics today, some things that are trending. And of course, those are the stories we will be discussing in the course. Egbertokun has resumed officially today, Wednesday, at the force headquarters in Abuja. And the former IGP, Osman Alkali Baba, officially handed over to Egbertokun, who resumed duties as the 22nd IGP around 12 p.m. Well, it would be recalled that Egbertokun was appointed IGP in an acting capacity by President Bola Tinubu on Monday, and subsequently on Tuesday he was decorated with his new rank by the Vice President, Senator Kashim Shettima, at the State House, Abuja. And speaking today at his official resumption of duties, IGP Egbertokun asked for the cooperation of all stakeholders so that together a police force that reflects the values of the people and aspirations of the people being served can be sustained. That is one of the stories. The second one is that the Allied People's Movement, JPM, in its bid to invalidate President Bola Tinubu's election, closed its case at the Presidential Election Petition Court, PEPC, in Abuja today. Well, there are reports that Aisha Abubakar, the party's Assistant Welfare Director and the lone witness in the 2023 presidential election, notably all the respondents, including the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, President Tinubu, Vice President Kashim Shettima, the All Progressives Congress, APC, and Mr. Ibrahim Masari, did not oppose the admission of the document, and the Justice Haruna Samani-led 5-member panel accepted the evidence as exhibit. Earlier, the APM had declined to withdraw its petition against the president and, of course, the presidential election as well, despite the Supreme Court's judgment on a related matter raised by the People's Democratic Party, PDP. Well, the court had suspended proceedings on May 30th after Chief Wole Olanipekun, senior advocate of Nigeria, counsel to the president, cited the Supreme Court's decision, and which he believed addressed the substance of APM's petition regarding the legality of his client's nomination by the APC. Well, nevertheless, the petitioner, represented by lawyer Mr. Gideon Idagboya, expressed readiness to pursue the case against Tinubu's nomination as Tinubu's running mate. Before the witness concluded her testimony, APC's lead counsel, Prince Lateef Fagbemi, senior advocate of Nigeria, presented a copy of the Supreme Court judgment through her, which the respondent argued that had already settled the issue raised by the APM. And, well, the Justice Samani-led panel adjourned the matter until July 14th, allowing all parties to proceed. And, of course, in its petition, the APM contended that withdrawal of Mr. Masari, initially nominated as the APC's vice presidential candidate, rendered Tinubu's candidacy invalid under Section 131, subsection C, and 142 of the 1999 Constitution as to withdrawal of his nomination. And Tinubu's purported replacement with Senator Kashim Shettima, rendering Tinubu's candidacy expired at the time of the replacement. That's according to the APM. And away from that, another story we'll be looking at today, former Assistant Inspector General of Police Hakeem Odumuso has denied President Bola Ahmed Tinubu appointing him as the chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC. Well, don't forget that a report had emerged on Tuesday claiming that Tinubu appointed Odumuso to replace Abdul Rashid Bawa as the boss of the anti-corruption agency. But in a terse statement on Wednesday morning, that's today, the retired police chief described such report of his appointment as totally untrue. And also another story that is trending today, and of course we'll be looking at, is that there are reports that despite the widespread hardship being experienced by most Nigerians, while the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu-led federal government is set to spend about 24 billion naira on the accommodation of lawmakers within the next 4 years. Report says that the Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Allocation Committee about 5.87 billion naira yearly on yearly basis. The allowances covers accommodation for 200% of basic salary, domestic staff 75% of basic salary, utilities 30% of basic salary, house maintenance 5% of basic salary, and of course wardrobe 25% of basic salary, and furniture 300% of basic salary. Well, from the total amount, the housing allowances of the senators would cost about 1.38 billion naira yearly, every year. And the amount for the Senate President and Deputy Senate President was not just 107 senators. So you can imagine if these ones are just this way, imagine furniture over 300. A breakdown shows that 4.05 million naira was allocated for accommodation, 1.52 million naira for domestic staff, 607,920 of course for utilities, 101,320 for house maintenance, 506,600 for wardrobe allowance, and of course 6.08 million for furniture allowance. 49 billion naira on yearly basis, and the amount for the speaker and deputy speaker, like I said, was not disclosed. So since the allocation for the Senate President and his deputy and the speaker of his deputy were not disclosed, if it's actually being disclosed, of course, you know it would be more than what they are budgeting for the senators. So you start calculating and you start counting. Does Nigeria have this kind of money to spend on housing allowances, utility staffs, wardrobe allowances, and even furniture, house maintenance as well? So also take a look at this on our show today. And of course, the national president of Arewa Youth Consultative Forum, AYCF, Yerima Shetima, has set a 5-point agenda for the President Bola Tinubu's administration. Well, President Tinubu, upon assumption of office, vowed to change the economic and security template of the country within 2 weeks. He carried out a major shake-up, leading to the sack of all the service chiefs from the revolution, dissolving all the governing boards of the government-owned parastatals, and of course had earlier relieved Abdul Rashid Bawa, which is the chairman of the EFCC, of his duty as the chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, and of course Godwin Emefiele as the Central Bank of Nigeria CBN governor amid other reform policies. Well, Shetima, the Arewa Youth Consultative, to outline 5 major areas to focus for the new administration. Talked about security. Of course, they also expressed optimism that Tinubu would make giant strides in tackling insecurity in Nigeria. Talking about that, of course, he has put major people in place, which we'll also take a look at. Some of them people have described as the bandits' nightmare. How true is this? We'll also find out as well. And of course, he noted, according to him, Tinubu is an advocate of restructuring and true federalism, but he might not want to do it directly. For instance, what happened was one of the best things he has done by sacking those service chiefs. Well, he said this is a clear indication that he is all out to confront insecurity by bringing fresh ideas and people to tackle it. We'll also get to know your thing. Well, how could Ribadi come in to be his, of course, national security advisor when he's not even in the military? Well, for Yerima, he says it's a good thing because he's very principled and does not tolerate corruption. Not because he was a former EFCC chairman, but because he's a no-nonsense person. So he's sure. He says in the area of corruption, Shatima said Tinubu has shown Nigerians his determination to subdue the hydra-headed monster in the country with by bringing Bawa to look well. He said somebody like Hadi Sirika must be brought to book and made to explain the last-minute scam, because that's an abuse of our sensibility as Nigerians. And also looked at the economy. He says taxes, the state should be made to pay taxes, of course, generate income for the state, for the country as well. He says though our economy is very bad, the constitution should be amended rather than depend on federal allocation. State should be useful by ensuring the payment of tax to the center so that the burden will be lesser at the center. And then he went to agriculture and ensuring the sector is managed by capable hands, beyond looking for oil, diversifying the economy, of course, going into planting. He said, let's have people who know what it takes, even if it means bringing expatriates on how as well, must be very functional by allocating good money. And of course, finally talked about opening of borders, which people have been anticipating, of course, talking about it, but we don't even know what to read from the president's words, of course, which are very strategic sectors that the president must also look into with intensive care and attention as well. Do stay tuned. We'll be right back. Up-to-date information on topical issues affecting the common Nigerian, from issues on politics,
hello Nigerians, I remain committed.
Security, education, health, lifestyle, and so much more. Join Janice Kobum and Uyai Anyeken every weekday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Rise and Shine Daily, exclusive on Spectrum Television.
Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by cross them. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigeria Police Force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian Police Force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of?
My lord, the Matters Council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but we can't be talking about cases which are in court.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding you, not shaking.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Hello, welcome back. It's still the program, The Law of the People and Governance here on Spectrum Television. And of course, I told you that when we come right back, we'll take a look at some of those issues that, and of course, we'll be x-raying some of those issues that we will be looking at today. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you. Good evening, Nigerians. It's nice to be here again.
All right, so let's just quickly go into the business of the day. Recently, the president, of course, has made some very critical moves. I would say critical. I wanted to say important, but I don't know if it is important to you. Of course, the president not just suspending the Central Bank of Nigeria governor, Godwin Emefiele, went ahead to also suspend the EFCC chairman, Abdul Rashid Bawa, and did not just end there. This is happening within, this is June, just May, June. And of course, the president has also dissolved all governing bodies of federal government parastatals and went ahead to sack all the service chiefs. To some people, this move may be extreme, but do you think that the president is still on track? What is your take on this?
For me, it's nothing new. When a new government comes on board, the first thing to do is to, do exactly what the president has done. So for me, it's not new. What would rather be new to us is if we see the president bring in fresh hands. That's when we say, okay, something new has happened. Okay. But the idea of dissolving the governing boards, asking the board chairman and members to go back home, and then sacking the service chiefs, suspending the CBN governor and the EFC, there's been controversies, trailing the tenure of the immediate past CBN governor, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, especially as it regards how he handled the Naira notes and some other issues that were yet to get, the full details. The EFC chairman, of course, there are also issues of corruption leveled against him by, I think, Matawale, governor of, is it Katsina, either Katsina or Zamfara State, accused him, point blank on television. So and of course there are other issues in Senate climes. You don't wait to be sacked when there is a likelihood of corruption charge allegations hanging.
You just move.
Yeah, you just go. But it's only in Nigeria where somebody is accused of corruption. So, in fact, somebody is caught red-handed pilfering public fund, and the person go to court to get sometimes a perpetual injunction restraining the relevant agencies from taking him into custody for questioning. So by and large, the president has done well by taking those decisions. What will now be new to us is if we now begin to see fresh, capable, competent hands with the character, the honesty, and the integrity
coming to office.
Yeah, coming to office. But if after this hoopla
and he disseminates them into other offices,
of bringing back ministers that worked under the President Muhammadu Buhari government, and then of course it's just it will be business as usual for me.
Wow. Okay. Let's take a look at the personality of some of the service chiefs, like bringing them. I know that there have been so many, reactions. These already he didn't just sack them and left the office empty in a minute. Okay, he had people to replace them with immediate effect.
For the service chiefs, the truth is there are traditions. There are traditions.
Did the president follow the traditions?
In some, I would say he didn't, because usually in the military, is the next seeing a junior officer getting rapid promotion within a space of 3 months, just to prepare him for the office of the IGP. And when that happens, what takes place? Every other senior officer that were there leaves for compulsory retirement. And when you do that, it simply means the experience, the investment is gone. It would have been proper that if you want to replace the IG of police, the next in rank takes over. It's just like what we have in the judiciary, for example. If a system that the senior in rank takes over. But we have seen some form of manipulations even from the executive, and that's what is happening. For example, the man who became the IG of police now, Egbetokun, just got promotion a few months ago from AIG to DIG, and then between March this year and now you know
he's acting IGP.
He's acting IGP. So automatically what that means is that if there was any DIG that was senior to him, if there was any AIG that was senior to him.
Okay, that brings me back saying, oh, could it be that you know, maybe there's some form of nepotism, the president trying to favor some people?
Well, somebody mentioned that somewhere, and I said, well, the Egbetokun of a guy has risen through the ranks. He must have been undergoing trainings, because if you look at his profile from 1990, there are a series of trainings and courses that he has attended, meaning he was
preparing for this day.
He has been growing through the ranks.
Okay.
So if you call it nepotism, is what I would not stay here to say whether it's right or wrong that it was given to a Yoruba you know, person, as it were, or a person close to the president. But what the president has done that is commendable is the fact that there is a balance in the appointment of service chiefs. You have 2 persons from the southwest, you have 1 from the southeast, you have, I think, 2 from the is it north central, and then one from the northwest and northeast. So if you look at it, there is a balance. Why do I say so? In the service, you know, in either of the offices of the service chiefs. And we saw probably just 1 Yoruba, the rest coming from the north, and probably 1 from south, who was the chief of naval staff, you know, either chief of naval staff or chief of air staff. But in this current appointment, the chief of army staff is from southwest. The chief of naval staff is from the southeast, and then the other 2. One is from the, I think, northeast, and the other one is from north central. I think the national security advisor is from the northeast, while the other 2 are from the northwest and then north central. Meaning there is a balance. Even though I have a problem with the appointment the president made before yesterday, out of the 25 appointments that he made, only 1 person came from the southeast. About 25.
That's what part of the things I was
going to talk about. So if anybody says there's nepotism, well, I do not want to say it's neither here nor there, but I think the president has actually started well. We can only hope that Mr. President will continue to ensure that that principle of federal character that is enshrined in section 14, sub 3 and 4 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, he maintains it in his appointment. He gave 6 appointments for special advisors. 1 came from the southeast, 1 from the south or so, and then the rest came from different geopolitical zones. The framers of the Constitution, they knew that if you don't keep a law that allows for even distribution of offices in terms of appointment, a president will come that will abuse that privilege and then pick all appointments from his place. Former President Muhammad Buhari did that. He was so clannish, he was so tyrannical, he was so, I don't know the word to use to describe him.
Do you think that may have had anything to do with his military background?
It has nothing to do with military background. It has to do with his person. He claims to be a Democrat, but all through the 8 years that he was president, we never saw that similitude of being a Democrat. Because if you are a Democrat, it means you chop, I chop. It means if you think, you allow others think. But in terms of appointment, we never saw Mr. President do that, and that's what it is. It doesn't matter whether he's the president of Nigeria today or not. I've always been very vocal about the way he has, you know, gone on with his appointments, you know, and then we can only hope that Bola Ahmed Tinubu, assuming the court allows him to continue to be the president in the next 4 years, we want to believe that he is going to right those wrongs that former President Buhari, you know, committed, because there were a lot of infractions. Legions of court cases that were won by people, and then he stood on the screen of national TV to say that national security was superior to rule of law. If you take away rule of law from governance, Bola Ahmed Tinubu will do justice by ensuring that the rule of law is supreme, that the provisions of the constitution are strictly adhered to, that if there are infractions, that people are free to seek redress in court.
Okay, that still boils down to, of course, the words of the president when he said, let the poor breathe, don't suffocate them. Another issue, talking about the words of the president of the Arewa Consultative Forum, Yerima Shatima, join a 5-point agenda for the Tinubu's administration to meet. Of course, these were very key sectors. I know we've talked about issues like this before, and he's already given the president a go on fight against insecurity by, of course, sacking the old service chiefs and bringing in new ideas, according to him, fresh minds into the business. Yes, it's a business, of course, securing the country. The advisor, and of course, he talked about you know, other persons who have been appointed to take up that position. Also taking a look at agriculture. That was another sector which he marked down for the president to look at critically, and of course the economy as well, education, and opening of border. I think that's the point that really got my attention rather, opening of borders, which he really talked about. And also, if time permits us, we'll also look at the you know, different allocation of funds to the incoming senators. Of course, I don't know, I just did a brief summary, took a review of that, looked at what they are going to be paid, their salary, of course, their furniture, you know, allowances, wardrobe allowances, utility maintenance, and a whole lot of that. I don't know if it's necessary to, you know, pump in so much amount of money into a public office. Of course, it looks like you're going there to enjoy your life, and you may never want to go out in a very long while. But foreign president talked about giving the president, you know, ticking green already on security. What do you have to say?
I do not understand the basis upon which he gave Mr. President, you know, a pass mark on security.
Okay, well, for him, he says he has put the right people in place.
Well, those people just resumed. We haven't seen anything they have done. We haven't seen them, you know, go to the field. A few days ago, they were still killing, even up until the day before that we're talking about. So when you are taking Mr. President right on the issue of security, probably he needs to wait for the service chiefs to even go to the office and maybe take a look at files and then begin to visit formations, especially where it's a pass mark for Mr. President in the issue of security. Of security. But on the issue of the economy, of course, Mr. President has stamped his feet to the ground, saying that subsidy is gone, and subsidy has been removed, but Nigerians are still bearing the brunt, and government has not done it. It's been close to a month now. Government hasn't done anything to cushion the effect. To cushion the effect. We're still watching. The workers have gone to cut a deal for themselves. We have less than 1 million workers in Nigeria, but we have 180 million Nigerians. Now, if the workers have gone to cut a deal to increase the salary from 30,000 to whether 100,000 or 200,000, what happens to the 180 million Nigerians? What's government going to salary increment? What happens to the rest of us who are not federal workers? I mean, have you considered the capacity of the states to pay this money? Because that's always a problem. You go and increase federal minimum wage. You leave the states with nothing. How are they going to pay? Most states are yet to even agree to the payment of minimum wage, and then you're going to increase federal workers salary. So how would the states be able to breathe? And don't forget that most of the tax powers belonging to the states have been confiscated by the federal government. That has not been returned. So how are they going to begin to look inwardly to raise funds, more funds apart from allocation, to be able to pay the salaries? Because once once the federal workers get their salary in terms of an increment, definitely the states will start agitating for theirs. You know,
talking about that, still in the economy, he talked about, you know, the state not depending on, of course, allocations from the federal government, and of course also making the state to pay taxes as well.
No, the states can. Why would the state pay tax to who? To the federal government? It's like the Yerima of a man has forgotten that we operate in federalism. And the federalism presupposes
That's why
that,
he's calling for an amendment of the
good, but you don't ask states to, yeah, if you're asking state to pay tax, like we used to have in the 60s, then it means the federal government has no business
with what comes out.
In certain activities. Are you aware that the federal government has jurisdiction, exclusive jurisdiction, over 68 items on the exclusive list? Federal government has concurrence, meaning they can share the powers with the state, over 28 other items. Now ask me, what is the federal government doing with 68 items? That's why everybody wants to go to the federal, because the federal is so attractive. Now, when you come to allocation, federal government gets almost 58 point something percent of whatever is generated monthly in a place called Federal Republic of Nigeria. The state has 22 point something percent, while the local government has 20%. If you put that together, that's about 100%. And now you're talking about states paying royalty. States can only pay royalty if we go back to the era where states generated their own revenue, had their own form of government, and then they pay royalty to the federal government. That means you need to share the responsibilities that federal government is having. For example, before now, federal government used to have the exclusive right in power. Is that supposed to be so? No. Federal government should only be interested in things that have to do with currency, CBN, banking, marine, what again? The army, defense, army, foreign affairs, and some other things like that. But today, apart from these things that I've mentioned, federal government is into almost everything. For example, why should we not have state police? Why? But in the 60s, we had state police. Why should the federal government be the one to create local governments for states? It ought not to be so. Why should the federal government stay in Abuja and then INEC wants to come and conduct election for a state? These are very critical issues that has affected our democracy because of the long years of military rule. So if Yerima is saying that states should pay taxes, what it simply means is that both administrative and tax powers that the federal government has no business with, they should relinquish it to the states and then concentrate with whatever it is that they want to concentrate. That's my take on this matter.
Okay, let's not go into education. Of course, I know the president has come up with the student loan bill, of course, which some students have said they're not still comfortable.
That loan bill. Let me tell you, that loan bill is go to school. Now the question Mr. President has not answered is, we have 33.3% unemployment rate in this country. We have 133 million Nigerians living below poverty level. Line. We have inflation of 22%. We have purchasing power at near zero. So you are saying the students should come and collect loan and pay 2 years after graduation. Where are the jobs? Those who graduated 20 years ago are still looking for jobs. You are asking that students should come and get loan. And I am suggesting to Mr. President that instead of giving loans, why not give grants to these students? Because majority of these students are already doing businesses to survive. So why not provide soft loans or grants to these students? Let them use it and do businesses. Just this morning, I was talking about federal government changing the curricula of education in Nigeria. We have paper qualification. I have a degree in public administration. I have a master's degree, and I'm going for my PhD. I have a PhD in journalism. But if I go to look for a job, they will tell me they need 10 years experience, and then they tell me you need 1, 2, 3, 4 skills. So I have gone back to go and get skills. So if you now add 12 years I used to get all my degrees, and then 4 years for skills, that's about 15 years. How old am I? You are asking me to have 10 years. Government should look at the paper qualification and paper education that we are having in Nigeria and see how they can rejig the curricula and include entrepreneurship and include skills education, so that when you come out from school, you don't need to carry your paper and begin to look for jobs. You may have had the experience. You just go look for either something and do instead of waiting for job. So asking students to go get loan when you know you cannot even provide jobs for them is like asking the students to commit suicide, because that's what it means. And the conditions they have even stated are very stringent. Your parents, must have less than 500,000 naira annual income, and then if you don't pay, you have a certain number of years. Have they studied how students in abroad even advanced nations, how most of them commit suicide because they can't pay their loans. I mean, start paying.
And that means
Where
you
will you
must
get a
have
job?
been saving your alawi.
How much is the alawi? If somebody is posted from Akwa Ibom to Lagos, you pay your accommodation, pay your feeding, do everything with how much? Whether 40 or 50,000 naira you pay. How much are you going to save?
Are you sure it's up to 50,000 naira?
Whether 50,000 naira, what of accommodation, what of feeding? Now, subsidy is gone. Meaning transportation is ×2. Apart from transportation, whatever you were buying for 100 naira, you now buy for 200. Everything you pay for, you pay ×2. It's on that same 40,000 naira salary or 50,000 naira salary that has not been increased. Because these are the issue and the effect. You haven't done that, and you want to give student loan. I mean, for me, it won't work like that.
Okay, one of the last points we're going to touch on this is the opening of border. Of course, we know that since the Buhari-led administration came in and borders were closed, well, it was going to look like, you know, Nigerians were going to depend much on what they manufacture. But something, I'd like to use rice, that commodity, you know, I like to use rice as an example here. Yeah, Nigeria started, you know, taking rice, you know, it was amazing to see it, right? And then I think at that point, that's when rice even costs more. So it now makes me wonder, okay, the borders were closed and things became even more costlier. If the president should decide to look into, you know, opening the borders, do you think that maybe this would cushion some of the effect of even the fuel subsidy removal, you know? Or
What the question was rather asked, what was the reason for closing the borders? What were the aims? What were the objectives? Were they achieved? That's the issue. The CBN governor, the former CBN governor, made pyramids of rice everywhere and said, you know, rice is everywhere. The price
it became costlier more.
But all those things were window dressing, because shortly after those pyramids were found, did you see them again? Did you see the rice in the market to buy? The local rice that we should be buying for cheaper rate was going for something thousand. So who was deceiving who? Look, Nigeria has a capacity done to encourage farmers. What has government done to ensure that there is an enabling environment for businesses to thrive? Because, for example, we had Nigerians who wanted to, who had factories that would produce tomato paste. But where was the dollar? The dollar was nowhere to be found. Rather, we saw federal government pumping dollar to one person, creating, you know, a monopoly of one person, while other businesses suffer. That same person is the one that will be refining our crude. So he determines what happens. In fact, there's absolutely nothing we consume in this country that is not produced by one man, because government has decided to create a monopoly of it. So, but until we begin to give everybody the chance to produce what we need in this country, look, with such policies, why will you create only one monopoly when there are other people? For example, we have 4 refineries that are not working, and then for 8 years that you were in government, you did nothing about it, because there were people who were bring it back and sell at an exorbitant rate, and then people come with papers to collect subsidy, and then you had to even go borrow to pay, you know, to pay subsidy. But our refineries are not working. The monies that you spent paying subsidy are money that would have built 6 new refineries. How much is subsidy? Almost $21 billion. So what are we talking about? And that refinery is almost the biggest, 650,000 capacity. But the ones we have in Port Harcourt, Warri, and Kaduna put together is not even up to 200. But we spent more than $18 billion to pay subsidy rather than fixing refinery. So you see, the problem we have is the political class. Until the political class develop the will to do things rightly, we will continue to buy rice at even 50,000-60,000 naira. So the issue of those pyramid of rice and all those things that CBN governor did, they were just window dressing, because where the rice? There's nowhere to be found. Does it mean that we don't have rice mills? There are rice mills in this country.
You know, I was only using rice as an example.
Yeah, no, but there are rice mills in this country that can self-sustain us. If you go to Abakaliki area, you go to Adamawa, you go to Anambra, there are very serious, even Akwa Ibom here. There's one rice mill along Ibiono. If you're going to Ecotech, 200 metric tons. That's big. So why can't government encourage farmers to go into rice farming and even other products that we tend to to import? That's the only way we can self-sustain. So opening the borders won't change anything because we will still buy at exorbitant rate.
Why do you say opening the borders won't change anything? Okay, let's compare to since the borders were shut to when the borders were open. I use rice as an example because rice used to sell for around 18,000, 19,000 per bag.
That was when? That was like 9 years ago, please. Not during the Buhari's regime.
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
There was never a time we bought rice at 19,000 naira.
So when he came in and then shut the borders, things became costlier rather than
things became costlier because the right things were not done. If the right things were done, we would have been producing more for local consumption. So
what happens if we open the borders? Don't you think it's going to change anything?
Now, if we open the borders, we will have all kinds of rice coming to the market. Do you think it will bring down the price? Or do you think people will leave the local rice and go consume the foreign rice even when the borders were closed? Were some persons not being favored? Were some businesses not being favored? These are the issues. I am only saying, I'm not against opening the border. I'm only saying that government needs to be sincere in certain policies. Are you closing the border because of one person or because of a section of the country? Are you opening the borders because of one businessman or because of 2 or 3 sections of the country?
Okay.
There must be sincerity in whatever policy. After all, public policy, what government chooses to do or not to do. So if government has decided to open the borders, then let of the common man. So if our democracy for the last 8 years didn't improve the common man, what's the guarantee that it will improve even with the opening of the borders? So the point I'm just making is government should come clean. Government should be sincere in setting of its policies. That's just what I'm saying.
Okay, thank you so much. That of the speaker and the deputy were not mentioned. So if you look at such a huge amount of money, you'd be like, if this is just for the senators, of course, their upkeep, maintenance, and all of that, and the speaker hasn't been mentioned and his deputy, that simply means that, wow, these ones are even more greater. So it still looks like money is still being pumped into the I would say politics. The era of politics is supposed to be over, but trust me, I think I think the political class are the richest.
Well, the truth is, I've always said, why you see personnel of other sectors, they are abandoning those sectors for the political class because it's been made so attractive. Trappings of the office. Now, if governance is for service, why do we need to be spending such an amount that you have mentioned? I'm not saying don't make provisions for allowances and all those stuff. We are talking about cutting cost of governance. Now, if you do that, now a worker works for 35 years and he retires. To get his pension is a problem. And then an administrator is employed to look into those issues. He pays fast into the pension. But here we have politicians just about 4 years to go. I mean, he has 114% increase in salary. I mean, these are very critical issues.
Vincent, because of time, we have to, we've looked at certain issues, of course, as it borders Nigeria. Recently, all through the week, almost some things have been trending, of course. The sack of the service chiefs, the president dissolving the governing boards of the MDAs, and of course a whole lot of other issues that were trending. We've taken a look at all of them. Trust tomorrow we'll take a look at something else here on the Pro channel, all of which you can find on our website SpectrumTv.ng. Follow us on Twitter at SpectrumT Online. My name is Rachel David White. See you tomorrow.